The Deep Dark Truth podcast makes no claims as to the guilt or innocence of anyone involved in this or any case, but we do take great care and responsibility in helping families raise awareness and get their voice heard. If you know a case that you believe needs more coverage, please email us at thedeepdarktruthpodcast@gmail.com.
You're in the place where mysteries and the missing meet, where conspiracies lurk around every corner. Welcome to the Deep Dark Truth.
Welcome back to the Deep Dark Truth. I'm Mo.
I'm Chip.
And I'm Mikey.
And welcome back to our Solved series, the series where we talk about cases that have been marked as solved, but either the victim's family, experts, or law enforcement believe that the case was closed too quickly and they have lingering questions. In this case, both the victim's family and independent detectives that have reviewed all of the evidence do not think the details of the case add up. Before we get started, we're going to do a brief overview, but we suggest you go back and listen to part 1. We also want to let you know that we will be doing a live react episode to your most outrageous conspiracies and mysteries coming up in the next few weeks. So if you want to be on the show, send us a text or a voicemail that we will play at 313-355-3411. So bookmark your spot and get some coffee because this one is a marathon and not a sprint. So last episode we talked about college football player Tanner Barton and how he was found deceased at the bottom of the stairs at a friend's house on the morning of April 21st, 2012 while visiting his hometown from college. The cause of death was ruled positional asphyxia, and it was explained that the coroner believed that Tanner was unable to reposition himself. Tanner and his friend's stepsister had been drinking, but with the blood alcohol level of only 0.063, alcohol didn't seem to be a main factor contributing to his death. So the coroner left the case open, hoping that police would be able to figure out what happened, and more details would emerge later. There were a lot of inconsistencies in the reporting and the witness statements, which we'll be talking about again very shortly, and a lot of strange circumstances that followed thereafter, such as conflicting toxicology reports and his mother, Michele, who will also be joining us later, being approached by a veterinary practice co-owner to discuss the misuse of narcotics by a vet in her office who had been with Tanner the night before he died. We think it's important to note here that you do not have to believe in the theory presented by that person in order to believe that between the inconsistencies in reporting, witness statements, and toxicology, that something about this case is strange in a way that can't be shaken. So in this episode, we're going to focus on the aftermath of Tanner's death, from his family trying to gain awareness through national media, the eventual closing of Tanner's case, and the controversy around the alleged recantments by his mother in regards to ketamine testing. Now that you're caught up, let's keep going. So at this point in the death investigation, there are many inconsistencies that the family wanted addressed, but the original detective felt that he didn't have enough cause to re-question witnesses. When the family brought up those inconsistencies, the detective allegedly said, "Now you can see why we have concerns," but no real progress was being made in the investigation, so the family requested a new detective from the prosecutor. In reality, the family actually tried to get the case taken out of the county, but instead getting a new detective was the middle compromise that was reached. The new detective at first was very communicative. He detailed plans he had to the family for investigating Tanner's case, but all of that soon changed when he allegedly told Michele Barton via email that if she were to bring up her concerns about Dr. Veterinarian to him again, that he would stop communicating with the family altogether. Feeling stuck between a rock and a hard place, in 2015, Michele decided that she needed national media attention, and she started to try to reach out to new outlets. She reached out to Dr. Phil, who had advertised, "Have you ever been accused of a crime and want to clear your name?" They wanted Dr. Veterinarian on the show, but at the last moment, he decided against going on according to the family's communications with a producer. In 2016, Michele started Tanner's Voice. She did a march for Tanner. She went to local newspapers. In 2017, she went on podcasts. She tried different cold case groups and other victim advocacy groups. During this time, the family also starts advocating for two things. First, they advocated for their blood samples to be compared and contrasted against Tanner's to prove that those samples were in fact Tanner's, since there was conflicting toxicology reports. Later, they learned that Tanner's samples had been destroyed, despite the fact that his case was still open. At that point, they start advocating to exhume Tanner's body, but they are told that it would be fruitless, that they would not be able to get the kind of information that they needed from the body anymore. In October of 2017, she went on Nancy Grace's podcast, and in January of 2018, she went on the Dr. Oz show, which aired in February. Through those shows, and through those partnerships, she learned new information. She was told that the lividity didn't match the body. She got access to different cell phone records of Tanner's. Dr. Veterinarian had sent a cease and desist to one of those national media outlets, saying, unbeknownst to you, that they had tested for ketamine, but how did he have knowledge that the family didn't? They discovered text messages on Tanner's phone detailing that he had taken Adderall a few days before his death. And Dr. Oz said that he believed that more testing was needed in Tanner's case. But shortly after, a reporter working the family contacted Michele to tell her that various news sources were lawyering up because there was a rumor that they were going to close Tanner's case and that the Howard County Sheriff's Office was saying that they have tested for ketamine. What happens next fuels a conspiracy theory that Michele and her family, quote-unquote, knew the AIT labs had allegedly tested for ketamine, despite being very public in their clamoring for testing. Within days, Michele heard rumors about Tanner's case going to be closed, and an independent reporter that was working with the family asked the police about those rumors. They allegedly said, as of April 24th, 2018, that Tanner's case was very much still open and that they did not comment on open cases. The lead detective on Tanner's case started liking posts that were connected with the Michele is lying about toxicology conspiracy, which we're going to get way more in depth about in a second. And shortly thereafter, Tanner's case is closed. The family learns that Tanner's case is being closed through an email. The detective had tried to call Michele and had actually gotten a hold of her husband, but had not told the husband what was happening and said he wanted to talk to Michele. Because of the circumstances of him liking all of these conspiracy Facebook posts, Michele did not want to talk to him, but no one else contacted her. The family was never brought in, which I find kind of strange. It also should be noted that the family actually ended up going to the superiors of the detective at this time about liking the Facebook posts, and so that was an extra added nuance to the case. And maybe he's calling to try and apologize. Maybe he's calling because he's angry that they have won over his head. Before we're joined by Michele, I just want to go over some of the inconsistencies a little bit more in depth again. There are so many inconsistencies in this case, just in the documentation. Let's get into it. In regards to the position of the body became a big factor in determining cause of death. Tanner had blood on his face, in his nostrils, he had foam, he had blood on the back of his hand, almost as if he had wiped away the blood. The position of the body helped determine what that cause of death might have been. Except, we know that Jeff, the stepdad, had moved Tanner in order to try and clear his airways in preparation for CPR. The coroner said that he was on one side, and the police report said that he was on the other side. The coroner says the left, and the police report says the right.
And we think these should be standardized. We're assuming, as civilians, that coroners and police who work together a lot probably have set up a standard of we refer to the individual's left or always the viewer's left. You don't switch back and forth.
Like a stage right, stage left situation. Like, if they're constantly on crime scenes together, they have to have the same point of view or be using the same point of view in their documentation, I would assume.
And yet, here we are.
There's also the picture that stepdad Jeff took. That is the only true picture that we know of original positioning of Tanner's body.
Allegedly.
And yet that picture never seems to be mentioned again in any of the documentation, aside from the fact that it was taken and it was sent to Carol and Carol deleted it. That's all they talk about it. I mean, I'm guessing they got the picture, but they don't mention it in the police report. They don't mention it in anything.
You would think this would come up, a picture of the body before anyone touched it, but no.
Then there's the issue of the toxicology reports. Obviously, all 3 toxicology reports are conflicting. It is my personal opinion, and only my personal opinion, that the very first toxicology report is the correct one. And I say that because it is the only toxicology report that matches all of the witness statements. That Tanner had been drinking, and in the days leading up to this, he had smoked marijuana. And it's the only thing that says that both are in his system.
However, would you like to go on your rant about how it doesn't matter and they're all invalid? I know you want to. Let's just do it now.
However, if you have 3 toxicology reports, and all 3 toxicology reports say a different thing, every single one of them is invalid. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they tested for. It doesn't matter what they didn't test for, because you can't validate any of the toxicology reports. None of them can be valid because none of them match. And if all 3 are testing for it, at least some of the same things, and those same things aren't giving you the same answers, they're all wrong, and it's garbage. It's all garbage. I don't know why I have to even say it, but I'm saying it, and now I've been on my rant. Are you happy?
We got there.
So, if the coroner says we weren't able to get urine, where the actual hell did this urine come from? I mean, the thing is that it doesn't have to be fake, just it has to be any kind of mix-up. But again, it doesn't matter if they mix it up or they didn't mix it up, because guess what?
Does it not matter?
Doesn't matter.
Welcome to Whose Line It Is Anyway, because the toxicology reports are made up. Conclusions don't matter.
That's the fucking tagline of this episode. So now there's more inconsistencies, but wait, there's more. Why didn't the police point out the negative ketamine test when Michele asked for it, or when any of the national media outlets or local media outlets asked them for comment? If Michele is yelling from the rooftops that she wants a ketamine test done and is talking to the detectives, how come nobody brings this up? Also, the cover letter for AIT Labs that Michele gets right before the case is closed is a list of all the toxicology reports, and there's a letter from AIT Labs. That letter is backdated.
There's a letter from Axis Labs?
So this letter is from Axis Labs, which had formerly been known as AIT Labs, and it reads as follows. Date, November 10th, 2012.
End quote!
Obviously, this is months after Tanner had died. It is addressed to the new coroner in Howard County that was not the coroner at the time. And it says, prior to July 16, AIT has now become Axis Labs. It says in 2012, laboratories provided forensic toxicology service to the Howard County coroner, and that the secondary death investigation of Tanner Barton, that the laboratory case number associated with all of it. It says enclosed is the correspondence. It's a categorical listing of the individual drugs tested. This list does include ketamine. It says that ketamine is included in the scope of this analysis. And this is sent to Michele right before Tanner's case is closed. Now, I'm not going to repeat to you how it doesn't matter. But I will say that this letter is very strange just because it's dated for 2012, but then it's postmarked in 2018. It references events in 2016, and it addresses the new coroner, which wasn't elected, I don't believe, until 2016. So why is she just being sent this in 2018? And why did they backdate it in such a way? Why is it formatted like this? This is not how you format professional correspondence. It's not a very understandable way of how they format their list for toxicology either, but that's just my personal opinion.
We're not just, misinterpreting something. It's dated as if the letter was written in 2012, and then in the first sentence, in the first true sentence, says prior to July 2016. This is where I'm like, there's something fishy going on.
Back to the future letter.
Exactly.
Some of the witness statements are a little conflicting. Jeff talks about how Tanner was allowed to have multiple drinks, but that his stepson Marcus was only allowed to have one drink. So it's not actually, it's just a little strange. Also that he seemed to be used to boys being passed out on the floor at the end of the stairs in the basement. That was kind of strange. Also, Jeff says that he went downstairs because the dog had went downstairs, but there is a dog gate at the top of the stairs. I mean, the dog gate could have been open in the morning for X, Y, or Z, but just an inconsistency in reports and statements.
It is stated in the coroner's report that when he walked in, it was closed and he had to open it. I know that's a weird detail, guys, but the dog was downstairs and that's why Jeff found Tanner's body.
Dr. Veterinarian was on the scene the night before this took place. He also showed up to the scene with Carol Lindskog at the exact same time, and yet there is no statement from Dr. Veterinarian whatsoever.
They never interviewed him.
The police show up, they start their log at 9:24, and at 9:40, Carol and Dr. Veterinarian show up at the same time. During this period of time, Jeff had called Carol to let him know what was happening at the house. Carol then called Dr. Veterinarian. Dr. Veterinarian then called his son Tommy to try and get a hold of Tanner's parents. This is kind of strange simply because Tanner's phone was on the scene at the time, and Marcus was in the same school and grade as Tanner's sister, Jameson, and had texted her back and forth before. Something that's not an inconsistency, but just kind of strange or suspicious or baffling is, why did Dr. Vet's son be the one to call Michele? Very strange. So now it's the time to once again be joined by Tanner's mom, Michele, and we're going to jump right into the questions. We talked a little bit before about the fact that you had concerns over Dr. Veterinarian being called and that he was able to enter the crime scene because he showed up with Carol. During Jameson's interview, the detective says that he's heard rumors about an affair and other rumors about the house. He at least touches on the fact that he had heard from other kids that the house was kind of a party house.
They know that they're married now?
I'm sorry, what?
Carol
What?
and Dr. Veterinarian, the stepmom and Dr. Veterinarian that showed up at the house at the same time are married now.
What the
The one who is responsible for moderating his drug control after being... Ugh. Oh my God.
Yes, they're now married.
Cool. Great. Awesome.
Wow. Well, Mo, if you need that genuine reaction, we could always use this one.
Yeah,
and
it's
plug
here.
it
We
in.
got it recorded.
Like, we got the what the...
How dare you hide that from us?
All right, guys, button up. Chip, your question.
Around mid-2014, is that around when you requested a new detective?
Yes. In 2014, actually it was July 2nd. Actually, it was on Tanner's birthday. The first time I spoke with him was July 2nd, 2014. And I'd asked him for a new detective through the prosecutor. Yeah, the actual prosecutor. I contacted him and said, I want a detective. This guy is not doing anything. It was, the original. But I kept saying, I want it out of Howard County. I want it out of Howard County. And he said, no, we're just going to keep it right here for now. We're just going to keep it here. We'll just give you a different detective. And I'm like, well, I guess that's the best I could get. So that was not July 2nd. That was like in April, May-ish. So it had taken, the detective hadn't even called me to talk to me about Tanner's case. I had to call him. And it was on Tanner's birthday, July 2nd, 2014. And he was gung-ho. We were going to do this, and we were going to, this is how we're going to interview them. We're going to find out where they live and where they go to school. And we're going to get on it right away. And they didn't do any of that.
The first detective had told you that they didn't want to re-interview any of the witnesses, correct?
Yes, they did not, because it would have been harassment, he said.
But the second detective seemed like that would be an option.
Yes, he was going to. He was like, okay, now this girl, Michele, goes to this school. What we do is, without her suspecting it, we just kind of show up and ask her questions and pull her to the side or meet with her at her house or wherever she's at.
So you requested for a new detective in like April, and it wasn't about 3 months until you actually reached out to that detective and actually spoke to him for the first time?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Correct.
Oh, my gosh.
I know.
You are talking to him about how the case is progressing, this, that, and the other thing, different information that people have come to you with, and he emails you not to mention Dr. Veterinarian, or he will stop communicating with you.
Yes, and that's why I stopped communicating with him. Yes, I had reached out to him, and I said, the only thing I was just talking, I didn't even mention the veterinarian in that statement, email to him. And I just put guilty liars in all caps because I was angry. I said, these people did this, and this. And I said, they're all guilty liars. I get an email back and said, do not mention or speak of Dr. Veterinarian in any manner of such, or we will stop communication. I was not allowed to talk to him about him. He says, you can't be bringing him up or something. Anyways, he said that I was not allowed to bring him up in such a sense, or he would stop all communication. And I remember I was driving down the road. I wasn't supposed to be looking at my email, but I did. And I was so angry. I'm like, I didn't even mention the veterinarian in this. And you all of a sudden are protecting him. Why?
Are the cops even allowed to stop talking to the family?
Yeah, I know, right? It was in end of 14 going into, probably 2015, like the beginning of 2015. Yeah, so it took a couple years.
Even if he decided who you had made that statement about, there are so many conflicting witness statements that, not only that, but there's also the whole issue that kind of gets put to the side a little bit, that these parents had knowingly provided alcohol in the past and basically just contributed to the situation, and that's never really addressed. So it could have been about that you were speaking about. Like, these people are guilty of something.
And it's obvious that they're guilty of something. The first detective himself actually told me that they didn't want to arrest the parents for alcohol. They wanted to arrest them for what really happened to Tanner. And he told me if he did arrest them for alcohol, he couldn't arrest them for what, they're hoping to find.
I think that what he meant was, if we prosecute them for this, then later the charges aren't going to add up, because if you charge for everything at once, all of those charges kind of compound. You bring a case all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But if they were to just charge for contributing to minors, minor in possession type of things, then stuff that comes out in court might be able to get thrown out if they ever had a different case, basically, against them.
Well, that's what he told me, but he was going to, they wanted to arrest him for contributing to alcohol. And, they had witnesses, kids that said that they had been drinking at that house before. So, but they wanted to wait and arrest them for what really happened to Tanner. So they knew something really happened to Tanner, and it was called a crime scene from the beginning. It wasn't like, they walked in and, oh, look, Tanner just had a heart attack. It was listed as a crime scene from the beginning.
So let's talk about the samples for a second, Tanner samples. To your knowledge, they were destroyed after a year, correct?
Yeah, yes, we didn't know that till 2017. So we'd been begging all these years. Mm-hmm.
You had been asking for them to retest.
Yes, and they just kept saying they trust their lab. They wouldn't do it, which was, they didn't tell us till 2017. All this time we'd been asking to have this tested for. And nobody said that Tanner's samples had been destroyed. And then here's the coroner saying he's still working on the sample test. I just don't understand.
Is that the point where you start advocating that you're willing to let them exhume the body?
Oh, yes. I was ready. Mm-hmm. I was ready the first year. Oh, it was about 6 months after Tanner died. And I asked him if we could exhume Tanner, and he said it was too late.
How was it too late?
He said it was too late to get anything from Tanner's system.
So they publicly told you that these samples were destroyed? Did they tell you why they were destroyed?
No, I asked for a chain of command. I did. In 2017, he had no clue. I said, my husband and I are willing to give a DNA. We want the DNA taken, and we will send you our sample. And he kept saying, well, I'll have to get back with you. I don't know what's going on. Okay, you're the lead detective since 2014, and you don't know what's going on.
But just to clarify, you wanted your samples taken so that they could be compared with the samples that were tested, since toxicology reports came back different, correct?
Correct, yes.
So that you could say, hey, this is definitely Tanner's sample. It matches with the DNA of his parents. Now we can test it.
Yes. And that was in 2017. And the detective, it took a while for him to tell us Tanner's samples had been destroyed. We had no clue.
Because they didn't want to tell you.
Yeah, how do you tell Michele that all these years she's been begging? Why wouldn't you have told me when I begged for that whole first year? It's a suspicious death, and you weren't going to close his case. Why would you not have marked those samples to be saved? Because this is a highly suspicious death of a 19-year-old kid.
The lab says that standard is we keep it for a year and then we get rid of it if those samples are being utilized.
We're not dealing with normalness right now, because, I mean...
Summarizes the
case. You
get
one toxicology report with a paper trail of who touched it, what chemist touched it, which toxicologist touched it, and it's released within 4 to 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. That didn't happen, right? You don't have paper trail of the toxicology reports, do you?
What I have is what you have.
Right.
A whole bunch of papers that are backdated that are from the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's obviously backdated it to make it appear as though, they wrote that, to make it appear as though Michele lied.
Oh no, it's very apparent, and it tells on itself. The very first sentence, in July of 2016, AIT turned into Axis Labs, even though it's dated for 2012. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. Mm-hmm. Because it shows no alcohol. You guys see that. There's no alcohol listed. Okay, I just was like, are you serious? So I threw it aside. This was like right before they closed Tanner's case. They sent me this with a subcategory list, which it was bogus. I read all that and I was like, okay, this is what you're sending me. You went out of your way to send me this package. And then it was the toxicology or the coroner notes. And then he says, evidently, evidently. When I read that, I think I said every curse word in the book. Evidently. Now y'all are telling me it's got to be black and white. But now all of a sudden you're okay with evidently there was a test and nobody wrote it down. And
are you talking about the urine test? The test that the coroner specifically says that no one could get urine from the body? That test. I'm just clarifying.
No urine test, but evidently one was taken, and evidently that same urine test that evidently was taken during autopsy shows negative for marijuana, which it would have shown positive.
I just can't comprehend it's witness give statements of alcohol and illegal drug use, whether or not marijuana is harmful or not. It was illegal at the time. He is using that as an underage kid, and why weren't the adults in this situation investigated further?
The marijuana, though, was before he had got to Marcus's house, correct?
Yes.
Gotcha.
The marijuana thing it blows my mind, because I know that when you take a urine test, marijuana shows up in a urine test. That's the main test they really test for it. And then here you have your AIT lab where it shows positive for marijuana. The trusted lab that the detective said that he trusted his lab previous. So now you've got that testing positive, and then you have your urine test, your alleged magical urine test shows negative so I just threw it aside. I thought I didn't know whether to yell at him or just laugh.
Michelle, do you believe the first coroner and that he was unable to get urine
Yes,
from the first
I do believe.
test?
I
Do you believe that to be true? Does he still believe that now?
He's retired and I haven't spoken with him in a bit.
Has he always been cooperative with you?
You know what? He really has. I think his hands were tied.
Or is worried about repercussions?
I just think because he was very honest with me. He didn't have to say all that to me. He didn't have to. He looked me in the eyes when he told me, those were signs of an overdose. And you could see when I remember looking at him, it's like he wanted to tell me more. I could see that.
Well, he probably had nothing concrete, like how his report says. I mean, he even speaks about it in his report, like, house was a mess. I can't speak to that. It looked like a party had taken place. I can't speak to that. All I can speak about is what I see from the body, which we know had been moved multiple times.
It started with Tanner's cell phone, kind of. Everything kind of started shutting down after Tanner's cell phone was mentioned on a national show in Canada. Everybody just shut down on me at that point. I had the Dr. Oz show and another cold case working Tanner's, helping us. So they both closed out their opinions, wish you well, this Tanner's cell phone was a big thing. I turned Tanner's cell phone over to have it extracted. I wanted everything listed, anything and everything that was in Tanner's phone, I wanted. But I didn't get that. I got somebody's opinion about what they thought happened that night, not like the full extraction. That's when we found out that allegedly Adderall was in his phone. It said that Tanner had taken a couple Addies a few days before he died at my sister's house. Well, my sister said she would have known it because she's a naturopath. And she would have seen the difference in Tanner. So he didn't. She told the detective there was no way my nephew would have taken 2 to 3 Adderall and I not notice it. He would have been zooming and like crazy.
Which, by the way, Adderall is, if this, alleged urine test exists, Adderall is detected in your urine anywhere from 72 hours to 96 hours. So 3 days and beyond it takes. And it's in your blood for at least 2 days. It's in your saliva for at least 2 days, usually. In your hair for months. And again, Adderall didn't show up in any of the toxicology. None. But that's fine.
So that all of a sudden there was this, he was on Adderall, and he had stayed up for 24 hours or 36, whatever. He stayed up to do a term paper with my sister. There was the Adderall mentioned in Tanner's phone. The cell phone was a big thing. Gal went on national TV in Canada. I got text and called a couple days later saying that Dr. Oz associate's going to be so angry and her, LPA and people, because somebody went on TV and mentioned Tanner's cell phone. And we don't do this. We don't work like that. We don't go on interviews without the other person. We don't do this. This isn't how we do things. And nobody knew the person that did it because I didn't plan on an interview. This was Tanner's case, and this was something about Tanner. It had nothing to do with Dr. Oz show or any of those people. So I was told I took food off of Dr. Oz person's table. It got pretty bad. I'm like, that was awful.
So you're working with the national media. You're working with a couple different reporters. And one of them comes to you and says, hey, we're hearing that they're going to close Tanner's case. We're hearing that they're now saying that they tested for ketamine. This is in 2018. We're hearing that they're starting to say, oh, well, we've tested for ketamine now, this, that, and the other thing, after you had spent all of these years being very vocal about in the media that you wanted it tested for. And then they go through like this list of yes or no questions. Can we talk about that? Because that really is what starts this whole conspiracy theory that's like Michele purposefully lied. Michele was being misleading. Michele was doing this, that, and the other thing, even though anybody who has read all three of these toxicology reports can see plain as day, they are conflicting. You can't trust one and know that that is the correct one because they're all so conflicting. But let's talk about that.
It was like the 18th, 19th of April, before his six-year anniversary, right before that. And I received a call from Nancy Grace's reporter, and she's like, hey, there's going to be a press. First thing was, hang on, my attorney's on the line. I got to get back to the attorney. Hang on. So right off the bat, it was a scare tactic. Got legal on the phone, got legal. I'll get right back with you. And I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? She goes, I don't know, Michele. The Howard County just announced they're going to do a presser. They told us they were going to do a presser. And I'm like, well, what's a presser? And she's, I didn't know. And she's like, they're going to, there's an announcement going to come out. And I said, oh my God, are they going to close Tanner's case? And she's like, no, I don't think so. I just think they got something going on. She goes, but we got to get our story out there first. We have got to get out there and tell our side of the story before Howard County comes out and says anything. I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't know. So then it got to the point where yes or no. You got to say yes or no, Michele. Yes or no. There's no, just yes or no. And then let's explain. Now, did Howard County test for ketamine? And I'm like, well, no, but if they said they did it, I have to say yes, because they said they did it, but it's not listed anywhere. It's not in the paperwork. And I kept telling her, I said, I've said from day one, it needs to be an actual test. It has to be an independent test. And Nancy Grace herself and Joe Scott Morgan, all, when we were on the show with this journalist, said it has to be independently tested. And I just said, no, it wasn't tested for, but they said it was tested for, and I begged them to test for it. So she kind of twisted all my words around. Then I was told that everybody was lawyering up, another scare tactic. Oh, Dr. Oz lawyered up. Nancy Grace lawyered up. Another cold case group lawyered up. They're all lawyering up around you, Michele. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I was freaking out. I didn't know what any of this meant. And, and it was already a stressful time of the year for me. So then the article came out. It was a horrible article. It accused me of all kinds of horrid things.
Which this article is in the show notes.
Oh, good. So throw the mom under the bus and let's hope for the best. So I was made out to be this horrid human being. I was so angry. And there was a lot more. Michele lied about Tanner being moved and all these things that they told me that actually happened to Tanner now are blaming me and saying that I lied about it all, and it wasn't true, even though they're the ones who found it and told me about it.
Which they talk about on the Dr. Oz show, XYZ. This is things that we need to figure out. These are things that you should start pursuing. They tell you.
Yes. And then
they're the ones giving you advice.
And then in the article,
you're a mom.
Yeah. And in the breaking news moment on social media, Michele lied about this. Michele told us this. They had the case file. They had the case file you have. They had everything, just like you have. I do believe they even had the autopsy photos.
At this point, the detective starts getting in touch with you, but you're pissed because you've seen online that he had started liking these conspiracy theories, that you knew what was going on the whole time, that you were lying about ketamine. Even if you would have thought at the beginning that they had tested for ketamine, even though you had said over and over again, test for ketamine, and they weren't making statements that they had tested for it, you can't trust any of those three toxicology reports. Even if the AIT had tested for ketamine, it also tested negative for alcohol. So it's unreliable. But you see that the detective starts liking these conspiracy theories that you're in on this somehow.
And he did. He started liking them. And I'm like, what in the world? I mean, here's this detective. Tanner's case was still open. So we emailed him on the 24th. And he said, no, Tanner's case is still open, and he would not be commenting on anything with the media, about the media, which I didn't know what was going on, because I didn't know that he had liked all that at that point. I mean, that morning, a couple days later, I do believe, we had a legal letter sent to the prosecutor, the sheriff, and he was tagged in it about what he had done, and that was unethical and unprofessional to be on social media liking things that were obviously all lies, and a bunch of stuff that had involved with Tanner's case when it was an open case. So he started calling me, and at that point I was so angry. That's when I knew that something else was going on.
Which, I mean, really, that part isn't in dispute. We have screenshots of that. You took many screenshots.
Yeah, we got
he kept trying to, oh, Michelle, how you doing? His first thing, because I was on my way to get, I had physical therapy. I broke some toes. So I was driving. So I didn't answer, but I still heard he left a message, and I listened to it a little later. And he's like, hey, Michelle, how you doing? Just wanted to check in on you. Never once did he say we're getting ready to close Tanner's case. Nothing. Yeah. So then throughout the day, I call after call after call. And I was like in the pool because, that's what you have to do when you do the therapy. So, and he kept calling.
Let's just be honest. You were thinking, you don't have to say this, I'll say it. You were thinking, go f*** yourself. I saw that you liking all these conspiracies on the internet. You haven't been communicative with me. You won't talk to me, but you're on Facebook having a merry old time. Point blank period.
Point blank period. But I didn't say that.
You didn't.
I was so dang PO'd when I seen that. I was like, shocked. And it's not the fact that it's the fact that he did it as well, and a case was open, but the things that she put in that breaking news on her page, I didn't read it till later. It was horrific. I was told to stay off social media at this point. They said, Michelle, you are being made out to be the most hated person in America right now by these people.
It's like, instead of just distancing yourself, you decided to turn.
On March 29th, both cases were closed. You closed them. Walk away. Walk away. If you thought that I was deceptive, which I wasn't, if you thought that I shouldn't have said this, or, it was all about the cell phone. Let's just be honest. Let's just put that out there. It was all about Tanner's cell phone and people getting recognition. These people weren't in it to help me. It was all about ratings. Let's get what we can out of this gal. Let's move to the next body. Is how I felt. And it's frustrating because they have no idea what we go through as families. I worked my butt off. For 6 years. And this gal who was helping me, a podcaster who, from Canada, amazing. I mean, amazing work that she and another gal from Colorado put into Tanner's case and helping me. We were so close to getting answers. And then here comes these people, just turn my whole world around, shut everything down, turned the world against me. Mm-hmm. It's awful. And still people, they're contacting me, telling me I can't be on social media with you, or they'll close their cases. They won't work with people if they are associated with me. So it's like, are we in high school, middle school?
You didn't come up with any of these theories, really. These are things that were presented to you, information that was presented to you by either the coroner or the investigator or different whistleblowers involving Dr. Veterinarian. And at the end of the day, you don't have to believe that ketamine was involved to realize that something isn't right. The toxicology not matching up with each other isn't right. The fact that the coroner and the police report both say that Tanner was on different sides of his body isn't right. The fact that we know from the witness statements that Jeff had moved Tanner's body before anyone had even got there, so there's no actual pictures that have been used in the case, at least, of Tanner's original positioning. We know that Jeff had taken a picture of Tanner before anyone moved him, but that picture is never to be mentioned again, really. Not in any of the formal reports. It just is mentioned in the witness statement that he had taken a picture of Tanner's deceased body. All of these things aren't things that you just imagined and came up with. These are things that were spoken about with detectives, were spoken about with the coroner, were spoken about and presented to the prosecutors from other parties that had more knowledge than you. So it's just very strange to me, this weird, I almost want to say cancel culture surrounding this one instance of you being asked, was ketamine tested for years later on the same morning that you learn that the police are saying that they tested for ketamine now, which I 100% believe you. And if I didn't believe you, we probably wouldn't be covering this case. But the fact is, we see you in newspapers. I see you on your local news. I see you on these podcasts on Dr. Oz saying, I want ketamine tested for, them asking for a statement from Howard County, and Howard County not mentioning that it was that he had ever been tested.
Yeah, they
for
never
ketamine.
mentioned. But then all of a sudden he was. When?
And even then, we know the date on that document, even though it says 2012.
Yeah, and it was sent to me in 2018.
There are a lot of sock puppet accounts that keep showing up on different posts that she makes, thanks for Tanner, that are very obviously sock puppet accounts, and someone very obviously doesn't want their identity known that they had made these accounts. There are dozens of them. Accounts just created, accounts that have no picture, accounts that are deleted shortly thereafter, that all say this, or that. Some of them deny that there were ever pictures taken of Tanner's deceased body, which is never in dispute because it's told to the police. It's in the witness statements. It's very obviously by people that have not read any of this information.
Wow.
But there's so many rumors that basically these sock puppet accounts misdirect and start these rumors. Oh no, this never happened. Oh no, this isn't true. And like, I'm here to tell you it's true. Like, I'm here to tell you I saw it. It's true. Jeff Lindskog admits it. It was sent to Carol Lindskog's email. It is all there. Like, there are so many things that are similar to that are this never happened, that absolutely happened.
Yes. No, I didn't. I don't even know that. I didn't even know that they were doing that. To be honest, I didn't know.
Yeah, stay away from the internet, Michelle. While the detective's trying to get a hold of you, he does end up getting a hold of your husband, who is Tanner's father. And does the detective say anything to your husband?
No, he just said that in his letter to my sister, said that Jeff was pretty upset about Tanner's death and he didn't want to talk to Jeff. He just wanted to get a hold of, Michelle. And no, he didn't. He said he didn't want to discuss it with Jeff. I'm like, wait, this is my husband, Tanner's dad, his real dad, and you're not going to tell him that Tanner's case is closing? He's a coward. He didn't want to talk to a man.
So he just said, I'm trying to get a hold of Michelle, basically.
Because my husband called and said, hey, the detective keeps trying to get a hold of you. He's called me several times. I said, yeah, he's called me a few times. And he goes, he's called me several times. He's called your sister. He can't get a hold of you. And I said, I don't want to talk to him. I said, I don't want to talk to him. And I don't want anything to do with that man ever again. You'd rather reach out to the women and not speak to the husband. Why? Why? Why are you scared? Are you scared that my husband's going to know and discuss it with you?
Then you finally end up reading an email. An email is how you find out that Tanner's case is going to close. You don't want to talk to him, but eventually you check your email and you say, oh, there's an email for him. I won't have to interact with him. I guess I'll read this. You find out Tanner's case is closing. What is your reaction?
I was livid. I cried. I bawled. I was so angry because there was no reason for Tanner's case to close.
And this is the night before it closes, right? Like the night before they actually...
Yeah. we're going to close Tanner's case now. We've come up with conclusion of what we think happened to him. We're going to go ahead and close his case. I just wanted to give you a heads up. We will be doing a press release type thing. And yeah, that was it. His bosses and the prosecutor and the coroner didn't think it would benefit us speaking. I'm like, okay, but you changed his whole manner of death, the manner and the cause of my son's death, who I've been begging for 6 years. It wouldn't benefit me to know.
It's very strange that they don't try and involve the family in that and come to you privately, have a whole meeting with you, especially this is years after the fact, right? There's no rush for them to tell the public. There's no rush for them to get this information out to the public when it's been years and you're the only one that's clamoring, right? You're the only one that's pushing for them to not meet with your family, discuss everything privately, say, we want to let you know before we have a press release. We wanted everyone to meet together. There was no reason for them to go forward with that until they talk to you. They can say, oh, we tried to get a hold of you as much as they want, even though they didn't talk to Tanner's dad about it. They can say that as much as they want. But at the end of the day, they didn't have a timetable. They didn't have to release it that day. They didn't have to release it the next week if they didn't get a hold of you. There was nothing pressing.
Except the week of Tanner's anniversary. I think they wanted to make it, well, look, we did it. 6 years. We finally figured out what happened to Tanner. Like, let's celebrate on his anniversary. It was like, that was a horrible week. And then to be all this going on, and then my husband had to go back home that week. So for them to do this was just pretty crappy.
Is there anything you want people to know about Tanner or the Justice for Tanner, or what's your soundbite? What's your call to action?
I just think people need to come to the horse's mouth on a lot of this stuff. I have fought really, really hard for Tanner's case, just for it to be, flushed down the toilet. We have a Twitter page, and the handle is @JusticeForTanner. And then we have Facebook page, Tanner's Voice, which you'll find a lot of like the podcast and a lot of stuff on there. I just hope everybody would follow us and support us, because, our goal at the end of the day is to have Tanner's case reopened. And I know I'm so angry that his case got closed, but it also opened our eyes to so much more. So many more doors have opened up, and we see things that we didn't see before. So it was kind of like double-edged sword kind of for us. But I am glad that now we're seeing things. Other people are seeing things. I appreciate you guys right there, for taking the time to do this with Tanner's case and going through it as well. And if you have any questions, contact me. Get it from the horse's mouth.
I know I immediately went down a rabbit hole when I started looking at the documents, and I'm sure much later than all three of you have. But as soon as I started reading it, I'm like, none of this makes any sense of what is supposed to happen in any of these processes.
Hence why Chip ended up making like 800 different docs that are like list of inconsistencies, list of Tanner players, list of blah, blah, blah.
The trope of the guy with the board with yarn connecting everything, that's real in this case.
It is 100% real in this case. And if I didn't have your list of players or inconsistencies, I just would have been lost in this.
Yes. Now that's why when sometimes I sound lost on interviews, because there's so much in my head that I'm trying to get out there and make it make sense. And like you say, not sound bananas, because people don't have the docs and the things that I have. So that's why sometimes I sound like I'm talking in circles, because I am. It's a crazy true story. It's just unbelievable.
The way that things happened actually in the timeline is different for you, right? You discovered things at different times. You discovered some things 4 years later after being told by, X, Y, or Z detective, but that thing actually happened in 2013. So your timeline is just different being part of it than it is telling it to somebody that doesn't know anything about it. And that's kind of what it comes down to.
And sometimes things are backdated just to f*** with us.
We just want to thank Michele once again for joining us. As always, all of our sources and socials and anything else you can think of, merch. It's all in the show notes. Subscribe to us so that you don't miss our next episode.
You just listened to the Deep Dark Truth Podcast. See you next time. And remember, your local cryptids want to meet you.